stream now. I will now call to order the regular City Council meeting of January 25th, 2021. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically, and members of council are participating remotely, pursuant to the council's electronic participation policy. Public access to the meeting is available on the Local Government Access Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers, and on the city's YouTube channel online. Public access is also available by telephone by utilizing the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. All callers will be muted and may only comment during the times allotted for public comment as indicated on the agenda. If you're on the phone line waiting to speak to council and are also watching the meeting on YouTube or Channel 8, please know there are a couple of seconds of delay with the live stream. Please turn down your computer or TV volume as we approach the sections of the agenda reserved for public invited to be heard, so you can hear the council meeting on the phone and to prevent background noise when you are unmuted to speak. Those calling in and wishing to speak to council may text 303-450-8757 to sign up to provide public comment. Please note that you must connect to the City Council meeting by calling the separate call-in number listed on the agenda. If you prefer to not text your name to the clerk, please speak up and indicate your desire to provide public comment when prompted at the appropriate times. Once you have been recognized, state your name and address and provide your comments to council. Thank you for following these directions and for maintaining meeting decorum tonight. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Here.
Councilmember Whitkovich?
Here.
Councilmember Peterson?
Here.
Councilmember Downing?
Here.
Councilmember Brown will be absent. Councilmember Goff?
Here.
Councilmember Duran Mullica?
Here.
Councilmember Escobar?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Please stand as you are able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, City Manager Geyer, do we have any responses to citizen inquiry?
Nothing this evening, Mayor Leidy. Thank you.
Okay. Any agenda additions or deletions? Okay. We are going to move into proclamations. We have Northglenn Police Detective Rick Williams with us tonight, so thank you for joining us to accept our proclamation. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, tonight's proclamation is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, which is in January. Oh, I'm getting some feedback. Can we mute some of our friends? Okay. All right. Whereas human trafficking is a form of modern slavery and involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act from a victim. And whereas anyone can become a victim of trafficking, while women and girls are the primary victims, victims and survivors come from every background, race, gender, sexual orientation, and economic status. Traffickers target individuals who, for any reason, are vulnerable, and whereas it is estimated that 21 million people worldwide are victims of forced labor, 4.5 million people are victims of forced sexual exploitation, 1 in 6 endangered runaways reported in the U.S. are likely to become sex trafficking victims, and 20% of human trafficking victims are children. And whereas, due to its isolating and discrete nature, many individuals across the nation are unaware that trafficking is not limited to international borders, and the problem exists in their own communities and neighborhoods. And whereas, increased education about how to identify and prevent human trafficking, along with improved victim identification, training for first responders, medical and social services for survivors, and increased public awareness are all critical to end trafficking. And whereas the city of Northglenn is striving to become a place where human trafficking does not exist, where people have opportunities and resources available to them, and where all people are treated as fully human and worthy of protection, support, and freedom. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, do hereby proclaim January 2021 as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month in the City of Northglenn, and urge all residents to recognize the critical role all Coloradans play in preventing, reporting, and adjudicating these heinous crimes. Together, we can protect the vulnerable, help victims find healing, and bring offenders to justice. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 25th day of January, 2021. So I would like to thank Detective Williams for being here again. Would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I certainly do recognize and appreciate this city taking notice of this prolific problem that goes on throughout our country. Throughout my experience in law enforcement, I've had multiple occasions to work human trafficking type cases, to include those involving illicit massage parlors. And I can certainly appreciate the city's efforts. And at some point, if the opportunity presents itself, I'd like to go over some ways that I found that seem to be a lot more successful in combating the issue than traditional means, and that can be discussed at a later time. But again, I appreciate it and thank you.
Well, we appreciate you being here tonight to accept this proclamation. Any other questions or comments from council? No? Okay, thanks again and have a great night. Okay, we're moving into a presentation. We have Jeremy Rodriguez from Congressman Perlmutter's office to provide an update. Jeremy, are you here?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out this system. The first time I've used this, so my apologies. I'm here and I would like to give you a brief update from the Congressman's office and a little bit about what's going on, what he's up to, and some priorities. So thank you for having me on tonight. So I'll just jump right into it. So Ed looks forward to working with with President Biden and Vice President Harris as he continues to work to contain the coronavirus and work to rebuild the economy. He's got a COVID relief proposal. Biden's proposal provides substantial funding to speed up vaccine distribution, reopen schools, and support struggling families and businesses. It also delivers direct aid to state and local governments, which Ed has long called for, specifically $440 billion investment in struggling communities. Provide grants to more than 1 million of the hardest hit small businesses, and leveraging $175 billion in additional small business lending and investment. Distributes $350 billion in emergency funding for state, local, and territorial governments to ensure that they are in a position to keep frontline public workers on the job and paid, while also effectively distributing the vaccine, scaling testing, reopening schools, and maintaining their vital services. Invest $200 billion to help hard-hit public transit agencies avoid layoffs and service reductions. Regarding the executive orders, Ed appreciates President Biden's getting to work and returning our country to the values we love and cherish, such as increasing mask wearing and other science-based steps to stop the spread of the virus, extending moratoriums on evictions, foreclosures, and student loan payments, rejoining the historic Paris Climate Agreement, and protecting Dreamers and TPS and DED recipients, rescinding the Muslim ban, and advancing racial equity. Senate confirmation, Avril Haines confirmed as Director National Intelligence. Confirmation hearings held for Treasury Secretary, Secretary of State, Defense Secretary, and DH Secretary. It supported the waiver for Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and looks forward to swift action by the Senate to hold hearings and confirm members of President's cabinet. Ed's priorities for 117 Congress. Democrats will continue to have the majority in the U.S. House, and Ed looks forward to addressing several big issues and getting things done for the American people, particularly as I just mentioned, COVID relief, stimulus package to reboot the economy, which includes comprehensive infrastructure package, safe banking, climate change, support for NREL, and reintroduction of the Green Neighborhoods Act, and continued support and advocacy for the Artemis program to get our astronauts to the moon and into Mars, and working on a NASA authorization bill. For the 117th Congress, Ed's committee assignments are, again, with the Rules Committee, Science, Space, and Technology Committee, Financial Services, and a possible chairmanship of the Consumer Protection and Financial Institutions Subcommittee. That is all I have for you guys today. I appreciate you having me on. If there's anything I could answer for you all, I'd be happy to do that. And with that, I just say thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Goff has a question.
Yes, thank you, and Mayor, and thank you also for coming to speak to us about Congressman Perlmutter's goals and projects and plans. My only comment or question or whatever it is that in order to have better stability in our government, that it seems like we might need to address some of the issues that have come up from these executive orders, where one president, shoots off a bunch of them, and then the next president undoes them, and the next president puts them back, or however this is going to happen. That if there are any plans or ideas about how to put some of these things into some kind of law rather than just an executive order, I would be curious to hear about that. If not, then just to make a suggestion that is something that is considered.
Sure, I'll definitely mention that to the congressman. Legislation is always preferred, but I believe this administration felt that couldn't wait for a number of these issues. But as he had mentioned, he had introduced immigration legislation in order to, for comprehensive immigration reform, basically. So that was one part of it, and we're looking forward to introducing more legislation to make these executive orders law and move forward in that fashion. So thank you for those comments. I will pass that along to the Congress and make sure he understands your thoughts. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Duran Malika.
Great, thank you so much. A quick question for you, Jeremy. So is there any more information you might have on where Ed is at on transportation funding, and specifically anything around the Northwest or the Front Range Rail? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is one of the issues that transportation and immigration, transportation and infrastructure has been one of the one of the issues that he feels that he could have worked with the Trump administration. At least one of the issues that he felt that could have got done. Fortunately, that wasn't the case, and now with this new administration, transportation infrastructure is a big priority for him as well. So he does support a lot of transportation infrastructure. He believes that this is one of the ways that we're going to be able to jumpstart the economy. Specifically on areas on where this happens, well, of course, you know, in the 7th Congressional District is his biggest priority. So he's always going to support those initiatives, especially in the north area. So he does support transportation infrastructure funding. Looking forward to working with the Transportation Secretary and see where that goes. But we'd love to chat with you guys more on that. I'll be on NADA's meeting this week to listen to more about what you guys have planned and share that information with Ed so he knows just exactly what the North area needs.
Great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions for Jeremy? No? Okay, well, Jeremy, I would like to extend an invitation for you to come back anytime. So we really appreciate this update and we hope you have a great evening.
Thank you very much. I will be joining you guys hopefully on a more regular basis this year. It's been a wild 2020, as you all know. So we're getting back on track and hope to see you guys on a more regular basis. Please feel free to give me a call or send me an email with any further questions. I'd like to make sure we all have an open line of communication and making sure Ed knows how you guys are doing over here in Northglenn.
Excellent. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. Our next item is public invited to be heard. Joanna, did you have anyone that signed up or sent you an email? I don't see anybody on the line.
I don't see anyone on the line either. I did just receive an email just a couple seconds ago. So if you'll bear with me, I'll read that from the computer screen here. I'm a paper person. Okay, so this is from a resident regarding the fence item. City of Northglenn. My name is Donna Kochenauer. I have lived at 11641 Lincoln Street for about 15 years. This neighborhood has gotten real bad at times because of the skate park behind us. Nobody notified this street before it was built. I was happy that they were finally cleaning up this corner of the park until I realized what was being built. Now I refer to my neighborhood as the trailer court of Northglenn. Sad but true. That skate park has brought drugs, foul language being yelled all the time, loud disturbing music, traffic of scary, probably dangerous people, drugs being sold literally behind my house on the sidewalk, broken glass, trash. I could go on, but hopefully you all get the idea. I have found corners of small bags that had drugs in them, used open condoms right in my front, side, and especially backyards. The people have sat on the concrete wall behind my backyard. I'm afraid to say anything to them for fear of retaliation. Years ago, there was a Northglenn detective that came and sat in my living room to watch the drug house across the street from me. I have asked for a fence to be built in the past to separate and protect our houses that back up to it. We never had a say in it before it was built. People jump my fence and use the opening behind us. I'm not sure why that opening is there. That just makes it easier for people to come into this neighborhood like that's a public entry. That sidewalk is for people who live here, not for the skate park. The chain link fence that is there now is in bad shape. The lot to the south of me is what I call land. I have zip tied it over many years to try and preserve it. The fence right behind me is pushed way over. That happened or got much worse when the city mower tractor got stuck going downhill and pushed it. I actually have a picture of that. Please build a fence to hopefully make this neighborhood a little, maybe a lot safer. Another thing that I think might help is a code enforcement officer that will enforce people to clean up their yards/houses. Thank you so much for hearing my concerns. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Again, thank you and a special thanks to Julie Duran-Malika. She has been very understanding, helpful, and just great with me. And that's all. And I did not receive any text messages or voicemails.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you. Okay, moving into communications. We will start. Who's doing the legislative policy update tonight?
There was not a meeting tonight.
Oh, okay, great. Well, Councilmember Peterson, why don't you jump in first?
Mike's already off, so it works, and I'll be short and sweet. I have nothing to update at this time.
Councilmember Witkovich.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few updates on meetings I attended in the last week or so. On January 12th, I attended the Historic Preservation Commission, and we are continuing on with our retreat and working on our mission statement and our goals, making some good progress with that. There was a question about, as it relates to one of our goals, it deals with diversity and another deals with training. And so there was a question about, we had talked about doing diversity training with all of our boards and commissions. And so there was a request about that and whether or not that was still going to occur. I know we talked about it over the summer, and I know we did one session, but there's a question about whether or not we're still going to do that for our boards and commissions. Also on January 14th, I attended the Parks and Rec meeting and had the pleasure of meeting the new project manager, Juliana Berry. We got to hear all about her wrapping up current projects and getting new ones underway. So that's really exciting. And I know that the Parks and Rec department is expecting and hoping for a more robust summer program. So that's exciting. And then on January 19th, I attended the North Metro Fire Rescue Board meeting. Had the opportunity to thank all those folks for their hard work at the tragic fire that we had here recently in Northglenn. So I was happy to be able to do that. And I had a really nice note from Director Tim Long just this past week. He's very appreciative of Northglenn having a representative who attends all those meetings. I think he said there's never any Broomfield City Council members who come to meetings unless it's something special. So they really appreciate us going to that. And so I'm happy that I'm able to be that person. That is all that I've got. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilmember Downing.
Thank you. I don't have anything to report tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Duran-Malika.
No updates for me. Thanks.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. Well, I had a couple of meetings last week, both on the same day, but I met with the CC4CA legislative group, and it was a special meeting with Senator Faith Winter and Representative Matt Gray, along with other of our state legislators, to talk about what they're looking at and thinking about in the upcoming sessions that will start, I guess, in a couple weeks or so. Anyway, transportation is going to be a big topic, I guess I would say, and there will be some legislation passed to support maybe a variety of different things, electrification, vehicles. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. Thinking about placing a fee on gasoline and moving towards electrification, and also road usage fees for every kind of vehicle who uses the roads. And so they're looking at things like Uber and Amazon. Even if they have electric vehicles, they need to be supporting the care of our roads because they're using them. And let's see, also more support for multimodal transportations, because we know we have, especially in not especially, but in Northglenn, we do have a lot of residents that make use of train, not only the train, but buses and bike trails and all kinds of things like that. So that all needs to be supported. And they are going to be looking at that. Also, later that evening, I had a meeting with the Rangeview Library District, which is our Anythink Library people. And not a whole lot to note. I mean, they're busy. They've got plans. If you go to their website, they've got all kinds of activities and things that are happening continually. They had a Civic Saturday program this last weekend. Many of these things are virtual. They are planning on opening to the public I believe it was February 1st, and somehow I can't find that particular date, but it's soon. And they're financially doing pretty well. Some of their investments and such did well, and they didn't have as many expenses as they usually do because a lot of the time they weren't open. So they are looking towards a pretty sound fiscal year next year. After that, who knows? But I mean, I guess many of us are in that kind of a situation. So that's all that I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Escobar.
Term comes up real quick. Not a whole lot to report. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. Jenny and I visited last week on our 19 applications for the CCPP. And out of the 19, we found it extremely difficult to pick the 6 that we did pick. I know we were instructed to pick 5, but we bent the rules and went to 6 because there was just so many and it was so hard to choose. So I want to thank Rupa for facilitating that and helping us get through that. I also want to thank Northglenn staff from Heather on down to Brooke, Amanda, the chief, for addressing the concerns of our residents in Ward 4 in a timely manner. I received a beautiful card from a resident and also received a very nice email from another resident for the hard work that I did. And that's not true. Staff did that work. And I want to make sure that the kudos go out to the staff for addressing those problems and helping our citizens continue to stay engaged in their concerns and bringing them forward. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback on, not piggyback, but just wanted to say thank you to Heather and staff for your hard work and your the residents appreciate it. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of updates from me this evening. First, I participated in the Colorado Municipal League's Policy Committee about 2 weeks ago. There was no major action taken on legislation, but we mostly spent our time working on the policy statement. So that should be in tip-top shape as the legislature gets going in February. Secondly, Councilmember Escobar and I held our first virtual Ward 4 meeting last week. And I have to say, I think it went pretty well. I was a little weary as to whether or not folks would attend because we typically have such an incredible showing from our residents for in-person events that I just wasn't sure if that would translate. And I was pleasantly surprised. I think we had between 15 and 20 folks join. And my hope is that as we continue hosting these virtual ward meetings throughout this year, that number will continue to grow. We spent some time with Joanna, who gave a presentation on the marijuana delivery ordinance and got some really good feedback there. So huge thanks to Joanna for providing a presentation that was really accessible and easy to understand for folks. I feel like I even learned a couple extra things that I didn't pick up on in our meeting. So that was really helpful. And then we took time to take questions and hear different things that folks wanted to share. And one of the things that came up that frankly wasn't a surprise to me, and I'm sure it wasn't to Antonio either, was a question about homelessness and folks wanting to know what the city was doing, if the cold weather I think the cold weather activation plan was working, wondering what we were doing about the gaps. And then many questions about why residents were getting information from next door about individuals, about an individual who had been experiencing homelessness, who had passed away, and wanting to know, why they weren't given information and what we were going to do about it in the future. And I certainly appreciated the questions because I know that these are issues that we as a council have been working on, and we've got the task force certainly working on as well. But I know that Heather sent out an email last week to council asking if we had interest in changing the policy that would allow us as council members to receive information when an individual experiencing homelessness does pass away. And I would really like council to take some time to consider that request. And I certainly would like to be informed, especially because Ward 4 is very active. I mean, many of your wards are very active, but Ward 4 is very active, and it's really difficult as a council member to get phone calls and questions asking about what happened and why there were, police down the street at Croak Reservoir and me not being able to answer those questions. Additionally, individuals who are experiencing homelessness truly are some of our most vulnerable residents. And I have to think that if they're not getting the support and resources that they need and they're dying of hypothermia in our parks, we've got a really big problem. And I'm hoping that, the rest of council, that all of you will be open to that request so that we can be able to get some additional information out to the community in a more timely manner so that questions and rumors don't continue to spread. And, I know that the city certainly isn't trying to cover anything up, but I do have to say that that's certainly been some comments that I've received from a number of different residents who've reached out via phone as well as via email. So that's one thing I would like folks to consider as we move forward. And Mayor, I don't know how you want to do that, but I'm going to continue on with the rest of my updates, and we can circle back to that at the end if you'd like. And then the other thing just on homelessness is I think RUPA is going to start providing a more regular update on some of the actions that the task force is doing. And I just want to say thank you for that, because I think it will definitely help us as council members when we're getting questions about what's happening. But I think also just for the benefit of the general public and residents to know what actions are being taken, I think it's a good way to do that. So anyway, I hope folks will continue to participate in future virtual Ward 4 meetings. We're meeting every other month. I think the second Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. and I believe postcards will be sent out as well. And then I just wanted to briefly touch on what Councilmember Escobar said about the CCPP board. I was absolutely blown away by the number of applications we received. I think he shared, but we received 19 applications, which, as you all know, is almost triple the number of any other board. And it was extremely difficult to narrow it down to a handful of folks to interview. And it's going to be even more difficult to narrow it down to one person. And so I know that we will have the opportunity to forward some folks into the pool for, I know, Mayor Leidy and I think perhaps Councilmember Peterson to review and consider. But I'm just wondering, given the extraordinary amount of applications that we've received, will Ward 4 be able to put forward additional candidates? Is there any situation in which Ward 4 receives a second seat? I mean, the amount of interest and participation is just really, it's exceptional. And I don't want voices to be lost there that are so different and bring such incredible experience to the table. So anyway, that's what I have this evening. And I just want to say a quick thanks to staff, Joanna, Rupa, Diana, Bob, the rest of the communications folks for all that you all did to help us kick off our virtual ward meeting. It was fantastic. So thanks again.
Okay, so couple of things. The idea of, I guess, to me, unpacking the homelessness request might be better at a study session, because I think it'd be nice to bring the homelessness task force maybe and their work forward. And in order for us to have that conversation, I think it may be, I feel like it would be shallow for us to have it right now. So is that something that you would be willing to consider as a discussion item at a study session in the future?
So I'm always happy to have a study session about homelessness, but I think that the request I was making was more procedural in nature to allow Heather to give council an update more regularly when an individual who's experiencing homelessness dies in the city. And Heather, you can.
I guess I need a little clarification because we did receive information that someone had passed away.
Yeah, so we got a text message and then we didn't get any additional information until multiple council members had asked.
Okay.
If you want to clarify, would that be helpful?
Happy to clarify if you'd like me to do that now, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So what Mayor Pro Tem's referring to, I did send council a text message the morning that we were notified. I was notified by Chief May that we had a deceased male in Croak Reservoir Park. So, based on city protocol, I notified council because that's consistent with keeping with you may get questions about the situation, police activity in the area could make the news if there was enough interest from local media. This particular situation didn't rise to local media, so there wasn't that type of additional information pushed out via a news release or community notification. There also wasn't any public safety element that we have happen with other situations. So please keep that in mind. So I did not provide any additional information based on the situation because it did involve a homeless gentleman who was found deceased in the park. It did appear based on the information that we have that he did die of hypothermia. Jessica, our community resource navigator, had been in communication with him and working with him. So based on normal protocol, I wouldn't necessarily share that information with council. So I think if I understand correctly, Mayor Pro Tem's ask of me would be that I would shift our protocol. And so anytime the police department or we have any other contact with a homeless individual that's resulting in death, and clarify that if it's anything beyond death, because that's what I'm hearing, that I would notify council and let you know as much information as I can out of, in keeping with respect to the individual's privacy, that of his or her family and so forth.
I guess that was my question because I don't know, like, are the residents asking for details? Are they asking for, because I completely agree that the homelessness question, that's not just a Ward 4 issue. That has been coming across the city to all of us as an inquiry and a concern of our residents. And so I believe, if I'm correct, is that we will also be highlighting that in our February connections because we're getting so many questions. So we want to help residents find specific information, but I worry about the confidentiality piece. So I'm trying to figure out what is the difference between the information we receive and the information you believe we should have received.
So the difference in the information that we received, the day that the individual was found deceased in the park, we got a text message that said there is police activity. There is somebody that's probably deceased. We did not know if that individual was experiencing homelessness and received absolutely no additional information between when that text was received and when this came up at the ward meeting. So what I'm looking for is a follow-up piece, right? So yes, there was an individual that passed away. Yes, that individual was experiencing homelessness. I'm not asking for intimate details about their medical history or any details that I think any of us would deem confidential. But what I am looking forward is that follow-up piece, because there was commentary on Nextdoor. There was commentary on Facebook. I certainly received phone calls about it. And I shouldn't have to say, I don't know what happened down the street from my house when a resident is asking. So I'm looking for that follow-up piece about, yes, this person was indeed experiencing homeless, or no, they weren't. And to your question, Heather, about if we're looking for any information about contact outside of death, no, like that's the piece that I'm looking for, because I want to be able to give my residents an answer when they call.
So can I further clarify, is that this incident we didn't have enough information, or is there something we need to change? Because I'm thinking about all the other incidents, right? If there's like shots fired, like we get a lot of information in the same context. So was this a single one that we didn't get enough information about, or is there something we need to change?
So based on that email that Heather sent out, I think the police department notifies us of, shots fired, or, in the event there's a robbery or somebody that perishes due to a violent incident. But according to Heather's email, there's no protocol that requires council to be notified in the event that somebody who is experiencing homelessness is found deceased. And from the email that she sent, that I'm happy to make available, I think you all have it, there's been more than one incident that has been connected to an individual experiencing homelessness that has died within the last 2 months in the city. So that's specifically why I'm asking for this internal protocol to be changed.
Okay. I'm just wondering if it needs to be more broad. Like, do you want to find out how people die of drug use, since that's also a concern in our city? Should it just be more broad, or is this something specific to people experiencing homelessness?
It's a good question, and frankly, not one I'd been thinking about. My focus has been on homelessness, especially in these cold winter months. So, if folks are open to making the change now, I think revisiting the conversation about what other data would be helpful in the future to help us make better informed decisions is certainly worth the conversation.
Yeah. I don't know. What do other people think? I'm struggling a little bit. And that's why I think I wanted to take it to study session, because to me, it's a broader thing. Like, is it something that we then want to talk about residents that die of COVID, residents that die of opioid use, or is this just a really narrow, we wish we would have had information about this? So I don't know. What do other people think? Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. It's probably a good idea to have a deeper discussion at some later date, but I would say that in terms of the homelessness situation, that's really a more immediate one, because we are in winter right now, and you hear rumors. Is it 2 people, homeless people, that have died recently? Was it 1? I don't know. All this stuff is blowing up, in my mind anyway, on social media, and I didn't have a way to, counter that or answer people's questions that they are asking me about. Is this really true? And I just didn't know. So to me, right now, I think it's the homelessness issue, because that's where there's a lot of concern because of the weather and the situation we're in right now. In terms of expanding it to some other areas, I think in terms of an overdose, some kind of drug overdose, so maybe the CCPP would be the venue, or the agency that would collect that data and could publish it in some way, or bring it to council's attention, or maybe you want that directly as well. I don't know. But then your other example about COVID deaths is something that people can find on the Tri-County Health, dashboard. No, well, not the dashboard, but they've got some place where there's maps and you can zero in on neighborhoods and cities and things and find it. Confusing. I have to admit, their website is a little confusing, but it is there. So, we could have a further discussion at some other time, but I do agree with Mayor Pro Tem Wilford that this homelessness question, and I'm glad she brought it up because I should have thought of that at my turn. And being on the homelessness task force, I'm on a different subcommittee, so I don't really know what's going on with housing for people, or how much support or how much resistance they're getting, or what whatever. I can't tell people because I don't know.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Peterson?
I think this is a interesting point, but I think it's premature, and I think it's important to maybe put this in a study session and take a look at what all our protocols are and things along this. I have never felt like I'm without or devoid of information, and this could be done by a simple call to Heather, the chief of police, if somebody has further inquiry on this. And so I'm concerned about a lot of things in terms of early speculation. Well, what's the cause of death? What happened? And these are things that we don't know at the time. And these are things that, regardless of this being guns being shot or violent crimes, that we're notified about all of this stuff. We're not bereft of information on this, and I don't see this initially as a requirement that I would have, because all of us can get this information whenever we want by picking up our phone. If we want to explore this further, it'd be better to do it with some real information in a study session.
Councilmember Escobar?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the question I have is, how much do we need to know? I mean, do I need to know, the carjacker's name? Do I need to know? I mean, what information do I really need to know for the city to continue to function? We have a police force, we have a city manager who directs staff, and our police chief works under that city manager, and he directs his staff. And I'm all for being able to answer my constituents' inquiries, but I think I do a pretty good job in finding out from the city manager how to answer that question. I don't know that I need to know every little traffic stop, and where does it? It's nice to. I hate to use the term nosy. It's nice to be nosy. I know a lot of people that like to be nosy, but how much of it is really my business or my constituents' business? If it affects them directly or affects the functioning in my ward, then I can get that answer from the city manager. That's my opinion.
Councilmember Duran-Mullica?
Sure. And then just off of Antonio's point, we got COVID updates on a number of people who have died in our city over and over and over and over and over for weeks. And I mean, I think Antonio brings up a good point. What information should we be allowed to get? I don't think in any way we should get personal health information. I think that is, just something that as a health professional is something that you probably should steer away from. But I think, we get information right now about, car accidents when there's a fatality. And so I think the problem is we're trying to address, concerns that come up from the community on an issue that is very sensitive in this community. If you haven't noticed, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten inquiries about what's the city doing about homelessness. Either, folks who would rather have a more of a hard-handed approach to homelessness in our community, to those folks who, are wondering if we're providing shelters for the homeless community. So there's a huge group of people out there, but I can't tell you how many times I've gotten these questions. And I don't get these questions about, marijuana or any other topic, really. Homelessness is a huge issue in the city. And so I think that alone heightens this particular issue. Meredith, I think you brought up a good point. Do we want to expand this? At this point, I wouldn't recommend that, just because I don't I don't feel like I'm getting inquiries from my community other than, you know, when it comes to like these homeless issues. And when it plays out in social media, I think it just gets a little overwhelming because people are like, what are you guys doing? What's Northglenn doing now? And, you know, I called Catherine and I was like, Catherine, what are we doing? And so, I mean, you know, you have to just start calling around for information. And so I think it is a delicate balance on how to move forward. But I think, you know, even if it's just a little bit more information than we're getting now versus just, you know, I had no idea that we even had any deaths. And so that was just a huge, like, that was a big shocker for me. And it's definitely seemed like people in our community knew a heck of a lot more than I did about the entire issue. So that's all I got.
So I guess I'm still stuck on, is this just not feedback to Heather that we didn't get enough on this last one and we'd like more on the, if it happens again? I don't know.
Well, I think it is, isn't it? I mean, I felt like we could have used a little bit more information in these types of situations. And so, but is there a specific policy or discussion or decision that needs to happen here as a council to get more information, or how do you? I guess that's the question I have, is like, how do you get perhaps like more information than we did in these two situations?
Yeah, I think that's why I'm a little stuck. I apologize. And also kind of with Antonio on the, if we need information, we just ask. And so is this just a moment of, Heather, in this case, we would have preferred more information because this is important. And we could have just called her and asked her for it. I don't know. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm kind of baffled by how overly complicated this has become, because like Heather just asked for direction in her email. Like, do we want to know as a council when someone who is experiencing homelessness dies? And that is all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for their name or their date of birth or what they ate for dinner the night before. I'm just asking for some basic information. And frankly, like, yes, I could pick up the phone and call Heather, but I'm like, I expect that information and I need that information. And frankly, if somebody experiencing homelessness died in Ward 1, I would be interested in that as well. And I shouldn't have to learn about it from Facebook or from Nextdoor or getting a text or a phone call from a resident. Like this, we receive weekly updates on the number of individuals that perished due to COVID. Like, I don't think that this is wildly inappropriate to ask about the deaths of our vulnerable population. So in my mind, this is purely just follow-up direction giving to Heather per the email that she sent out. This is not a full study session or a conversation that we need to spend the rest of the evening on.
Councilmember Goff?
Yeah, I think I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I just the email we got most recently from Heather on these two individuals, that was very helpful. If I had known that at the beginning, you know, like it's probably as soon as the city had figured it out, that I think that would have been helpful for me to be able to address people either in person or like through phone calls. I should say not in person, through phone calls or on social media, or at least feel confident that I know that what I was reading on social media is not accurate or is accurate or whatever. And that's all I would like, is just to have gotten that information sooner. I don't think Heather wants to have 6 or all 9 of us calling her, you know, when something like that blows up on social media. So I'm with Jenny. Just let's, if the request is just if we could get information like that more quickly than we did this time.
Okay, so all in favor of that idea, raise your hand. So that's 3 out of 8. So I mean, I can speak to why I didn't raise my hand because I'm still feeling like I had the information when I needed it. And when it came up as a question and the question was asked, we got more information. So I don't feel like it needs to be a policy change, but I also don't think I'm feeling like I'm lacking information. So can we move forward? Yes. Okay. My communications tonight, I have a couple of things. You probably heard that Bo Martinez resigned from the Adams County Regional Economic Partnership. So met with the economic committee or the executive committee multiple times. We're putting a process together to hire. And so met last week, we're meeting again this week. Let's see here. Oops. Lost my notes. I attended the Metro Mayor's Caucus annual retreat. The Parker Mayor is the only new member of our group, and we did a lot of consensus building as far as we actually rebuilt the way we give consensus on things. So that was a hot topic. We did have a little bit of fun, and it was a nice group to get together with. I attended the Tri-County Health Department update with Adams County and the AdCog meeting this week. I think Councilmember Downing was with me, and so was City Manager Geyer. They're never boring. They definitely ended with a bang. So if you missed that one, you should ask around. That was funny. So, and then Mile High Flood District Board meeting was this week. And that was all I had this week. So Heather, what about you?
Okay, I have several updates for council tonight. I'll start with COVID-19. First update, today Adams County announced a partnership with Platte Valley Medical Center to open vaccination clinic to those 70 or older at the Adams County Conference Center in Brighton, and that address is 4430 South Adams County Parkway, and pre-registration is required, and that information can be found on the Adams County website as well as SEL Health websites. So we'll make sure to push that out via our social media channels. I'm going to share this phone number in case any of our residents are listening. The phone number is 1-877-268-2926. And again, we'll have information on our city website, if not already, and social media sites. Fortunately, we are seeing our numbers start to decline. The county's 2-week cumulative incident rate is 388.3. We need to get to 350 to meet the level orange metrics. So it's exciting that we're on a downward trajectory, and hopefully we'll continue that moving forward. There was quite a bit of discussion about homelessness thus far in the meeting, so I just want to add a couple additional pieces. Rupa Venkatesh, our assistant to the city manager, is going to begin providing council quarterly updates on the work of the homelessness task force as well as staff. We've made great headway with our community resource navigator, Jessica Holsey, and the homelessness task force, as you remember, they had recommendations on a short-term level and then long-term level. And so as they've made headway with street outreach, which would be more of a short-term recommendation, there are longer-term recommendations that are going to require significant coordination on a regional level and effort on our part. So Rupa's reached out to Paulo Diaz, the county's community wellbeing and safety manager, and we're trying to get a meeting set up with Ray Gonzalez, our county manager, so we can start talking about facilities and what plans the county has, if any, or how can we be part of that conversation to start really getting some traction with actual discussions about housing facilities for our homeless community. So that's underway. Rupa is going to start providing City Council with information on a monthly basis So some months you may get quite a few bits of information about the progress that the homelessness task force and staff is making. Some months it may be less, but progress in and of itself. So when in doubt, always reach out to me or Rupa. We're tied to technology, so text, call, send us an email, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. I do want to take a moment and share one thing about social media, and that is staff really doesn't have the ability to monitor Nextdoor, because Nextdoor is a different type of platform than, say, Facebook, where you could go to a page and scroll a page and see who's posting comments and that sort of thing. So it is helpful if you do let myself or Diana know if you do come across something on Nextdoor, because I'm not on Nextdoor. I don't have the bandwidth for Nextdoor, and I have very limited bandwidth for social media monitoring. So I know Diana and her staff do the best that they can to keep up with monitoring social media. So when in doubt, don't assume that I've seen something or staff has seen something, because odds are we probably haven't, because we're pushing out information so much, so quickly. And then, being able to get on and just monitor is a whole activity in and of itself. So please help us be our eyes and ears in that regard. And that'll help me be more responsive to your needs on council. And that's all I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Heather, can I ask you a question kind of on that point?
Sure.
How would residents, because I do see stuff on Facebook and social media, how would they, aside from reaching out to us individually, is there a question line, or can they call the city to say, hey, can I get more information about, is that something where they have to filter through a committee, or like say
No.
Ward 4 residents had questions about that? Is there a number they could have called?
They could call my number. They can even have my cell phone number. I've given out my cell phone number to many residents. I'm on a text messaging basis with several who, if they're out and about in the community and they see something, they text message me. Like one resident, for example, will say, hey, the speeding problem on Grant Street's returned. Can you have Chief send some officers over? That's the informal relationship that I've built with that individual resident, and happy to do that with any resident. Shoot me an email. You don't even have to call and leave me a voicemail. If you want to do that, you can do that as well. So I'll share my cell phone number right now, and that number is 720-933-8945. And like I said, unless I'm on vacation or sleeping, typically have it with me. So I'll respond as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Joanna, any updates today?
I have nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney Hoffman, how are you tonight?
I am doing well, Mayor. How are you?
Good.
Good evening. I do have one, update/communication, and it's to respond to a question that I've gotten a couple of different times. Most recently, late last week, it was forwarded to me from the mayor, but it's come up a number of times, and so I thought it would be helpful to just respond to council as a whole. We've gotten questions, again, repeatedly on whether the city can adopt an ordinance that would prohibit the flying of the Confederate flag on private property. And on a personal note, I would love if the city would be able to ban the flying of the Confederate flag on private property. Unfortunately, there is a great deal of law on this from across the country, and it would be a violation of the First Amendment for the city to prohibit what is looked at as kind of the core way to express one's views on their own property. And so there's a great deal of law, for example, on being able to burn an American flag on one's own property as a way to express your opinion. And for better or for worse, the flying of the Confederate flag on private property, no matter how harmful it is to our community in terms of the message that it conveys, it is not the type of thing that the city can regulate. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Well, that question, I think, started surfacing around the 4th of July because we had a couple of incidents in our city. And I know some of our police officers encountered some challenging times. And so, but I do have a resident that has reached out multiple times about us making it illegal. Heather, did you want to speak to an idea you had?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Leidy. In talking with Corey and Mayor Leidy about this, as well as bringing Rupa into the conversation, one of our thoughts was to hand this issue over to the diversity board. Council would be handing this issue over to the diversity board and have them talk about it, see if they have some ideas. One initial thought I had was it's a great opportunity for education as to why flying the Confederate flag is offensive to communities. And so the diversity board could pass a resolution of sorts and help educate the community as to why this is an important issue to take up and to provide communication and education around. So that's one thought in terms of utilizing our newly formed diversity board.
How do people feel about that idea? Got a thumbs up from Ashley. Does anybody have any strong thoughts about passing it over to the DICE board? Councilmember Goff, how do you feel about that?
Well, we've just barely started, so I don't know that we've got anything beyond Black History Month, projects planned. So you can send it over. I'm not sure what, the officers, since I'm not, I'm just sort of an advisor, I guess you would say. I'm not sure what they would want to do with that or how they would approach it, but I don't see any objection to making that request to them.
Councilmember Esquivel?
Thank you, Mayor. I have no objection to that. I would support that move. I also know that education is the key to most solving most problems. But for those that are my age or a few years younger, I might refer them to Ron White. And Ron White says you can't fix stupid. So you can't fix stupid. That's just, it'd be nice if we could educate people on that. Some people just refuse to open up their thinking. And, it's my right to do what I'm doing. And we've gone through, 4 years of this, and hopefully the next 4 years will be different, but it's my right to do this, and I'm going to do this. But I do welcome the recommendation to the board to see if they can come up with some kind of ways to fix Ron White's statement. Thank you, Mayor.
It's super tricky. Does anybody else have strong feelings either way? No? So I don't know the formal process of that. I mean, Catherine, maybe it's just something that you mentioned was brought to council, and they can take it from there. I think it's tricky. I appreciate our city attorney giving us some background and kind of an official answer to that really hard question. So thank you. All right, moving to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the vote.
Mayor Leidy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford? I believe she may have left the meeting. Councilmember Witkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Downing,
Yes.
Councilmember Goff,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Malika,
Yes.
Councilmember Escobar,
Yes.
I will close that vote and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Okay, moving into public hearings. We have CB 1965. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance amending section 7-1-6, subsection T of the Northglenn Municipal Code, amending the Model Traffic Code 2020 edition as previously adopted by reference by the city.
Okay. I will now open the public hearing on CB 1965. Do we have any comments received prior to the meeting, or has anyone signed up to speak?
I have not received any comments prior to the meeting. No.
Okay. Hearing none, I close the public hearing. Moving into ordinances on second reading, CB 1965. I'm just going to summarize the title, 2020 edition Model Traffic Code Amendment. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Police Chief May is with us to provide us a brief summary.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Our model traffic code was adopted back in July 2020. We did inadvertently delete section 1702, so we would like that. This ordinance amendment will put that back in and actually take out 1701, which contains mandatory state penalties and surcharges. This would allow the municipal court to set its own penalties and surcharges. And again, the Northglenn Municipal Court has established a fine schedule for traffic infractions based on the points assessed. For the traffic infraction, the municipal judge assesses penalties based on the circumstances of the case, which can also result in an increase or decrease from the fine schedule. So staff recommends approval of CB 1965 on second reading.
Do we have any discussion on this item? Okay, please call the vote.
Mayor Leidy,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitkovich,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Downing,
Yes.
Councilmember Goff,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Malika,
Yes.
Councilmember Escobar,
Yes.
I will close that vote and CB 1965 on second reading passes unanimously.
Okay. Ordinances on first reading, CB 1966. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance repealing and reenacting Article 9 of Chapter 7 of the Northglenn Municipal Code relating to toy vehicles and unlicensed vehicles.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay. So we have Chief May again with us for a summary of this item.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Actually, this is going to just update, especially with all the technology and everything else. So after the passage of House Bill 19-1221, state changed some local municipalities may regulate electric scooters in amending Article 9 of Chapter 7, the municipal code can comply with the HB 19-1221. Many of the regulations regarding electric vehicles were outdated and could be construed to inadvertently regulate electric motor automobiles. I wish I would have known this because I would have gave Commander Heidi Waltz a ticket for Tesla, but it looks like the judge caught it. So we wanted to make sure that we can get this, make these changes and these updates in that ordinance. So below it just goes over, HB 19 has some definitions that we included in our new ordinance. So if there's any questions, I think Corey's online too. But again, the Teslas and those electric cars they're considered plug-in electric motor vehicles that can be used on our public streets and right away. So,
Councilmember Goff.
Good evening, Chief. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I have a quick question, I think. These electric assisted bicycles, and I have one. I'll be upfront about it. Would they be in another ordinance, or do we not address the issue? Those can also be used on bicycle paths and bicycle trails, and there's not a restriction on different levels or speeds or anything like that?
I'd have to go to the definitions, but I think they are allowed as long as they have pedals. They can go on our park trails and bike paths, and actually, so they act just like a regular bicycle. They're just electric assisted. And Corey's online. That's how I read them.
And Councilmember Goff, you can look at section 7-9-2, and it specifically references that they can be used on public streets. Unless the city makes a determination in a particular location that it's an unsafe location for them.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. That's all I needed to know.
Any other discussion? All right, please call the vote.
Mayor Leidy?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Downing?
Yes.
Councilmember Goff?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Mullica?
Yes.
Councilmember Escobar?
Yes.
I will close that vote, and CB 1966 on first reading passes unanimously.
Great. All right, moving into resolutions. CR3, Microsoft Enterprise Enrollment Agreement. I think I just read your title. Sorry. Is there a longer one, Joanna?
There is, but
okay.
I feel like my voice is not wanting to be heard, which I don't disagree with. I'll read quickly. A resolution approving an enterprise enrollment agreement between the City of Northglenn and Microsoft Corporation and authorizing related expenditures for Microsoft Office user licenses.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, welcome Bob. Bob Lair, our Director of Information Technology, is here to provide us a summary.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an agreement with Microsoft to purchase Office 365 subscription licenses to upgrade the office productivity tools used at the city. This includes the desktop applications that we're currently using, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and additional online services, OneDrive, and Microsoft Teams. It will also replace our current group-wise email system with a hosted version of Microsoft Exchange used with Outlook. There's a combination of full suite locally installed applications for City Council and most employees, and a smaller number of lower cost cloud licenses for field employees with limited use. The annual cost is just under $54,000, and it's included in the technology budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Duran Mullica.
Hold on just a second. All right, can you hear me? Great. Sorry, I thought there was an extra mute button. So I have a quick question about, first of all, I'm very excited that we're moving away from our group-wise platform for our email. So I definitely appreciate that. One question I was just curious about, is there a reason why we didn't look at doing with the Google Suite, the business suite that they have? Just personally being able to work with Google and their Google Docs and their entire Google enterprise, it has been life-changing for me to the point that whenever I open up a Microsoft product, it actually feels very archaic. So I was just curious, is there a reason why we're going with Microsoft all in versus Google? Just curious.
We did look at the Google Suite, and there is a big difference, especially for the heavy users that are using the Microsoft products, for them to switch to Google Docs. It's pretty substantial. The costs were Google wasn't any cheaper than Microsoft. They were pretty comparable on the price. Both are about the same, but it was just a comparison, and we felt like that it's going to be more familiar to the organization because it's pretty close to what they've been using. Obviously, email will change, but the Office suite is just going to be the new enhanced features with Office 365.
All right, I figured I'd ask. I know for me, it's just the next generation of products to be using in an office place. So I figured I'd just see what your guys' reasoning were. Thanks.
Councilmember Goff?
Okay, my quick question is that I'm assuming that all of this has been vetted for compatibility with Apple products.
With Apple?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, the suite works with Apple, Macintosh, any of the iPhone, the iPad, all of their products.
Oh, the calendaring system and all that. That's great.
Yeah, that was one of the disadvantages with GroupWise. They didn't have a version for Apple, but Microsoft does.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? Thank you, Bob. And yes, I got your email, so I'll be on that tomorrow. Well, let's call the vote.
Mayor Leidy?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Downing?
Yes.
Councilmember Goff?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Malika?
Yes.
Councilmember Escobar?
Yes.
I will close that vote, and CR3 passes unanimously.
Okay, moving into CR12. Joanna, will you read the title?
A resolution authorizing the city manager to issue purchase orders for a total amount not to exceed $1,167,349 for capital equipment purchases.
Move for approval.
We need a second.
Second.
Kent, you're very squeaky as you get organized over there. Kent Kimballman, Director of Public Works, is here to provide a summary of this item. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I was trying to block the two spotlights behind me this evening.
Oh.
Yes, tonight's resolution is for capital equipment for the Public Works Department. Over the last few years, we've utilized the Houston Galveston Area Council, which is better known as HGAC, for several years now to purchase our large capital equipment. That's a national procurement firm that we've used. So this year we're asking for another Scorpion trash truck, and this will be a replacement, and we will finally have an entire fleet of all Scorpion trash trucks. So we started this process 6 years ago with Scorpion trash trucks, so now our entire fleet will be all Scorpion, so that's pretty exciting. The second one is for a roll-off truck that picks up the bins and the roll-offs for our sanitation department, and both of those will come from the sanitation fund. A new flush truck from the water fund. This will replace our oldest flush truck. We received a new flush truck about 4 years ago. And the last item would be a new dump truck with a plow from the wastewater fund. And staff recommends approval of this resolution as proposed, and I'll answer any questions.
Any discussion? Okay, thanks for being here. Joanna, will you call the vote, please?
Mayor Leidy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Downing?
Yes.
Councilmember Goff?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Malika?
Yes.
Councilmember Escobar?
Yes.
I will close that vote, and CR 12 passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, discussion items. We welcome Amanda Peterson, our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services. She is here to talk to us about the Civic Center Master Plan Phase 1, January update. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The update this month, I think I've started the last several with the project continues to stay on budget and on time, so we don't have any schedule or budget changes for you tonight, which is always nice news to be able to deliver. This month, they're working on painting and priming the ceiling spaces in the theater and pool. They're actually starting to take down some of the scaffolding, and they work their way up. They paint and do all the detail up top, and now they're working their way back down again. So that's exciting to see some of that finished work start to go in. The HVAC units are being set, so starting to seal up more and more of the building itself. Most of the site work that you've seen happen, they'll actually wrap up for the season as was planned and scheduled. So not a lot of additional site work will take place outside of the building until we start to hit the warmer months, and work will begin to wrap up inside, and they'll move back to landscaping and that detail that'll happen on the site surrounding the building. FCI has selected a solar vendor with staff and team input, so we're expecting them to be moving forward with contracting here shortly. Just as a reminder, they were able to, or as the project, FCI had project savings from the several allowances for project components that have now either been completed or are reaching completion. So they're able to return those allowances back to us, and we'll use that funding that was already in place to add solar to the building. The furniture RFP has been complete, and that should be going out to bid this month if it hasn't already. And we will be selecting a furniture vendor through that competitive process. Other than that, we have had some inquiries about visiting the site, so we'll definitely give you an opportunity to get out there this spring. We'll work with the contractor to determine a good milestone for you to get to visit again. So we haven't forgotten about those inquiries. The last thing I want to share with you is during the design process, we really looked at the safety throughout the building and brought in our police department and looked at things like the proximity of the parking lot to our preschool play spaces and made sure that we had appropriate bollards and separation. Well, as we're seeing the building space come up again this week, we had the opportunity to go through the preschool classrooms and really see those design choices we made in person and how those work in a three-dimensional space. So we reviewed our lockdown procedures and our procedure for allowing parents into the room when class is in session, and made sure that our space was good and the decisions we made were going to work. So we were able to make a few minor tweaks to that system as we're seeing it, like I said, three-dimensionally, to make sure that we have those safety protocols and in place, and we're not having to modify the space later. This week, we'll also be visiting the site with a representative from the police department to look at some of our camera locations that we have. We want to just make sure that they are in the right spot, that they're giving the view that is going to be most helpful for maintaining a secure public space. So that is all I have for you tonight. It's very exciting to walk into the building at this stage because there's something new and different every time I walk in, and spaces are continually taking shape and we are able to see all of those elements that we worked so hard during the design process to come up with, and getting to see those come to life is really exciting at this point. So with that, our next update is scheduled for the last meeting of February, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
No questions for Amanda? No, I'm just kind of jealous of your job. You get to see that happening every day, and now it's really coming together. It's super cool.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you all. I'll hang out here on camera, but I think Brooke is going to jump into the next one.
Awesome. So we're talking about Village Greens fencing. So Brooke, Director of Planning and Development, thank you for being here. What do you have for us?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I believe it was about 4 weeks ago, Council had asked for staff to do some additional research and prepare some information on addressing a long historical issue along the eastern side of the park, western side of Village Greens in terms of the adjacency to the skate park. And in that, I won't go through the whole history that's in the staff memo, and I'll primarily focus, and happy to answer any questions on that, but I wanted to just primarily focus on the actual cost estimate to provide the requested fencing for the adjacent area that in question. We basically went through and looked at our last year's pricing, unit pricing that we used for the Huron Street project, and then, 2 years ago, and then prorated that on a 3% year-over-year inflationary cost, and came up with $106,000 with a 20% contingency of $21,000 for a grand total of $127,800. I wanted to just quickly point out that I went through a little bit of detail of identifying what is and is not included in this, so as to help council understand what the changing expectations could be, depending upon if we do decide to move forward with this project, that there may be some unknowns that we can't estimate based off of the previous unit pricing that we probably will have to take into account. I only mention this because we will likely need to, this number is likely to go up based on what we discover in the field, and if in fact we do have to do more things. The last thing I'll mention, or last two things I'll mention is that for other considerations is that we will need to get consensus from all of the property owners along there that would like to have this fence. And also we want to make sure that we would assume the ownership as we have with the other fencing along EB Rains on the north side of 117th that the city now does already. So just wanted to throw those few things out there. The last thing I'll mention and then open it up to questions is that our recommendation is to perhaps take this conversation up in more detail during the strategic planning retreat, just so as to understand where this sort of fits in the overall priorities and processes. Amanda's hanging out because her project manager, Juliana, will likely be the person managing this project if council decides to move forward with that. And with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Duran Mullica.
Yeah, I guess I have a quick question on when I'm looking at the costs that are not included in the estimate, and it says demolition of existing privately owned sidewalk within the alley. Why would that have to be taken out for this particular fence? Because this is the fence that is backing the park and the residents. So I'm just curious, why would you have to take out the sidewalk?
You wouldn't, but if you're a property owner and you want to have a 4-foot sidewalk in your new backyard, you're probably going to want the city to take that out. And so it's something that we didn't include in the cost, but I will tell you that it'll probably be the first thing that comes up is that you're going to install a new privacy fence over the sidewalk, and people are going to say, well, why didn't you take it out? It serves no functional purpose for us in our private backyard now. And so it's something that's likely to come up that we didn't budget for. But
okay, so I think that's where I get a little confused, because say I'm in one of the townhomes, right? Each of them has a back door that goes up to their own backyard that's fenced, right? Then there's an alleyway, and then the fence we're talking about is on the other side of that alley, right?
That's correct.
So, okay, and why would that fence that we're talking about need to have gates between residential properties? Because it's just a straight fence.
That's
where I'm getting confused.
So I'm confused about the gate. Oh, so
yeah, why would you need gates? It's just like a straight fence
in Village Green,
where the chain is running.
In Village Greens, there are certain city maintained fences that have gate access to the park, the pocket parks. And then there are other areas in Village Greens that do not. The thing is that there are people who know other people in the neighborhood and say, well, I have a gate now out to that 4-foot walkway, and now are you going to replace that with a gate on the new fence? And so the question is that what are people going to want versus what other people have had that are also city maintained fences? So it's just identifying that these are other variables that may need to be taken into account when we reach out to the folks. They may request it.
Okay. So we're not talking about replacing the fence that people currently have around their backyards. We're talking about replacing the fence that's on the other side of the alleyway, correct?
Correct, but we would have to take out the existing 6-foot high portion of the fence that's currently there, so that they would have access to the new 4 feet of area.
Okay. I mean, I think it's fine if we take this to another session, but I'm going to need, I think, probably a little bit of a better map to understand what 4-foot area you're talking about, because I'm just confused as I'm thinking about what that area looks like. I really am just getting confused about why would they even need gates, because there's not gates within the chain link fence they have now, is there?
But some of them have gates that access the walkway now.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll need a better map because I'm completely confused. I'm sorry, Brooke. I just don't understand why they would need a gate, because it's on the other side. It's like backing the park. It's on the other side of the walkway. It's not even connected to their backyard.
So right now, some of the residents that have an existing 6-foot fence have gates.
Okay.
And they may want to still have a gate that they can access the park to, because they have one. I mean, it's essentially what we're doing is here's the 6-foot fence, here's the 4-foot fence. We would be taking this fence out and moving it here. Some of these fences have gates in them. And so and those have a unit cost. And so the question is, are we replacing like with like when we move the fence out 4 feet?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think maybe I'll have to go and walk that area just so I could get a sense too of who has gates and who doesn't. My other question is, when I was looking at the map that you did provide in here, I wanted to just double check just to make sure the fence is going all the way to the apartment fence, right to the south.
That's correct.
And it's solid all the way, right?
That's correct.
Okay. That's the only other question I had. Thanks.
Councilmember Goff?
Well, thank you. I think my question might have been answered because it was about the gates. As I understand it, if they have a gate in their own backyard on their own, that little, I'm going to call it the inside fence, but the one that's closest to their house, that opens out onto a walkway that people can, right now people are walking through that alley or walkway and doing all kinds of disturbing activities, or some of them are, but that's what we're getting complaints about. So what we're going to do in effect is extend these homeowners' backyards out to the fence that's immediately adjacent to the park, and get rid of their little, that inside fence. And so right now, if they have a gate, it's to open onto that alleyway. It actually doesn't open directly onto the park. That's so I think we, I don't see a lot of need for them to have a gate, but you're right. We would probably have to negotiate with somebody if they insisted that they wanted one. I mean, I thought the whole point from the complaints that we were receiving was that they didn't want that traffic back and forth, but right behind their houses. And if you have a gate, that, people might be able to figure out how to get in and out or something. I don't know. But I also just wanted to point out to not only the rest of the council, but to any residents who might be listening, that this issue really is something that affects our city as a whole, because we have residents from all over the city that use that skate park and also use E.B. Raines Park. And so it's not just these 16 homeowners or whatever that are somehow going to receive this wonderful new fence. The fence is that we're talking about putting in is going to prevent some of the problems that have affected people's enjoyment of the park as a whole, and some of the safety concerns around the skate park. So that's it for me. That's all I'm going to say about that.
And Councilmember, I'm sorry. I think you bring up a good point, is that the fence issue is really a negotiating point, because for that very reason, I would say that the fences on E.B. Raines north of 117th, I don't believe any of those have gates. But as I said, the Village Greens properties that are in the pocket parks on the south of, they all have gates, as well as along Washington Street. And so it's a question of historically, what my recollection is when we brought this issue up before, people that not all of the then current owners, some of them were reluctant to want to extend the fence. They didn't want to. And so the gate issue is merely one of which, that if there's pushback, we have negotiating. It's a chip on the table that we can bring to the conversation.
Councilmember Escobar.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to say that I support this project as it's presented. My comment is really for both Brooke and Amanda. The fence that went up at Huron Street this last month or so, in a little over a month now, but was repaired this month, early January. The boards came loose. I think it was like 5 or 6 boards that actually came loose from that fencing. And the citizen who reported it to me said that they used, he called them scrimpy nails. In other words, cheap nails to probably off an automatic gun. And that's the reason they came loose. So my concern or my recommendation would be that as this new fence goes up, if it goes up, when it goes up, that the contractor's aware that if they use these skimpy nails, people or residents could probably push those boards loose, and then we spend our lifetime repairing them, because it doesn't take a whole lot for them to come loose. The ones that came loose on Huron apparently came loose just from the wind. So that would be my only concern, is that the contractor be a little more, and I don't want to say that they were irresponsible, but maybe a little more attentive to how they secure the boards onto the fence. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
And Councilmember Escobar, we can look at the language that we have in the spec for the project and make sure that if it needs to be stronger, then it is. We used a similar spec to what we had used on previous arterial fences, but clearly there was a little shift this time on the Huron fence. So we can modify that language to make that expectation more clear, so that there's not opportunity to do something less than what we've had previously.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda, for that. And good luck in negotiating with all those residents. The one on Huron was that it still is open space in there because one resident refuses to cooperate. But hopefully that'll be corrected sometime in the future. Thank you. Thank you for all you do, Amanda. Appreciate it.
So I appreciate the staff memo and highlighting the fact that we do have a lot of projects that need to be prioritized during our budget retreat. So while I support this project, I want to make sure that we put it in place with everything else as we look at the budget. So I kind of go with staff's recommendation on discussing it at the retreat. Councilmember Malika.
Yeah, I have another clarifying question. I'm sorry, Brooke. Is this, so I'm trying to look at the map again. So is the fence going above East 117th Avenue or below? Like the townhomes below 117th, right? All the way to the apartment.
It'll go right up to the apartment, or go right up to the townhome. It's the challenge is that we don't really have good aerial GIS that I can easily manipulate and put in graphics because I don't have a GIS. My desktop at work does not have a GIS license, and I only have one planner that does, and they were on vacation the week we were trying to get this done. So, but essentially, it's awesome. It's the southern property that adjacent to 117th is where the fence would begin.
Okay. All right. Because I was just trying to look at the parking lot, and the parking lot was too low to where like the houses I thought were supposed to be. So I just got confused. But if it's we're talking about,
there's actually a little sidewalk on the 117th on the south side, and that's where that line is depicted.
Okay. Awesome. I just got really confused with the map. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, Brooke, is it possible to have photographs at the next discussion?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Take pictures.
Yeah.
That might be easy. Okay. I think that might help us all.
And then if I could just say one more thing, I agree that we need to go in and we have a lot of priorities on our plate. I do want to just stress that, you know, I've been able to spend a lot of time in this area. I actually lived in this area for a couple of years. And, you know, Donna was fantastic when she showed me around her property, when she shared her story with us this evening. And that is nothing new. I've been hearing those issues specifically with the skate park since I was first elected. And so I think she's just one of many voices, unfortunately, when it comes to this fence. And so I know that, you know, we've done fences in the past. Some of them have been cosmetic. I really think it's important to stress that this fence is really a safety fence for these residents. There's some serious safety concerns that unfortunately she has to live with on a daily basis because of where the skate park is and the fact that there is no current, you know, fence that helps protect her property.
I totally agree with you. Councilmember Goff?
Just one more comment, and that is that I think that this is well worth looking into at a further date, because I also would like to see, you know, maybe in some broad strokes, but kind of an understanding or a general plan that we look at other areas in the city that might be needing to be addressed for similar issues. I mean, I think the skate park here and E.B. Raines Park is maybe one of the most problematic, but it's also one of the ones that most people visit, and even from outside of Northglenn, people come to that park. So I think it's really an urgent one to deal with, you know, relative to maybe some other areas in the city. But I think it should be, we should have something, and maybe there is, but a way to look at other areas in our city that might need a little bit of an upgrade or some kind of negotiation with residents about either fencing or some, you know, like dirt trails that instead of, you know, because people want to take shortcuts and things like that, that just would beautify our city.
Thank you. Any other final thoughts for Brooke tonight?
No other final thoughts, but when is our session again where we'll be discussing this again? What's the date? I just want to make sure that residents understand the timeline that we're talking about.
I think it's February something.
February 27th. It's
27th.
a Saturday.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't hear any more comments, Brooke. So we look forward to continuing this conversation in a bit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving into public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment. Statements are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak to council at this time? Joanna, do you see anyone on the line?
I do not. And I was just going to mention I didn't receive any emails or text during the meeting. So,
okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we have reached the end of our meeting. We are adjourned.
Good night. Thanks.